Listen to me carefully. This message is not for people who need attention. This is for people who are willing to disappear. Because let me tell you something most people don't understand. Real growth doesn't make noise. Real work is quiet. Real sacrifice is lonely. Real discipline happens when nobody is watching. See, the problem today is everybody wants to be seen before they're built. They want likes before results. They want respect before consistency. They want applause before effort. And that's backwards. Because success doesn't announce itself early. It whispers first. While everyone else is talking, posting, explaining, the real ones are working in silence. No stories, no updates, no validation, just work. And silence is uncomfortable for people who are addicted to attention, because silence forces you to sit with yourself, your weaknesses, your excuses, your discipline level. Silence exposes who you really are. That's why most people avoid it. They stay busy looking busy. They stay loud to avoid progress. But you're different. You don't need to explain your grind. You don't need to convince people you're serious. Serious people don't talk. They execute. Let me ask you something real. How many times have you announced your plans? Before you built the habit? How many times did you tell people what you were going to do instead of showing them what you did? That habit right there kills momentum, because the moment you talk too much, your brain gets rewarded early. You feel accomplished without doing the work, and discipline dies quietly. That's why this season of your life has to be silent. No explanations, no arguments, no debates, just repetition. Wake up, execute, go to sleep, again and again and again. Let people underestimate you. That's not disrespect. That's freedom. Freedom to train without pressure. Freedom to fail privately. Freedom to grow without distraction. See, when nobody expects anything from you, you can build without noise. And when you finally show up ready, it shocks people because they didn't see it coming. That's the power of silence. Silence builds depth. Loud people build surface-level confidence. Quiet people build foundation. And foundations don't look impressive until the structure stands tall. Right now, your job is not to impress. Your job is to prepare. Preparation doesn't feel exciting. It feels boring, repetitive, unnoticed. But boring done consistently becomes extraordinary. That's why disciplined people don't chase motivation. Motivation is loud. Discipline is quiet. Motivation posts quotes. Discipline sets alarms. Motivation talks about goals. Discipline works when it's tired. And tired work done daily beats excited work done occasionally. Let me be clear. If people know your next move, you're talking too much. If people understand your strategy, you're explaining too much. If people are comfortable doubting you, good, because comfort for them means focus for you. Silence sharpens hunger. When nobody claps, you learn to clap for yourself. When nobody believes, you learn to believe deeper. When nobody sees progress, you learn patience. And patience is dangerous when paired with discipline, because patient people don't quit early. They don't rush results. They don't panic. They keep stacking days. And stacked days turn into stacked years. Let them laugh. Let them scroll. Let them sleep while you're building habits that don't need motivation, because the day you finally speak won't be with words. It'll be with results. And results don't argue. They don't explain. They just stand there and make people uncomfortable. That's why you don't rush the reveal. You don't need to shock them today. You shock them later, when they can't ignore you. But before success can speak loudly, you must work silently. And this silence, this is where your power is born. Listen to me. This is the part nobody claps for. This is the chapter people don't post about, don't brag about, don't even explain. Because this is the phase where the work gets heavy and the audience disappears. You're waking up early, but nobody knows. You're staying late, but nobody sees. You're sacrificing comfort, but nobody cares. And this is exactly where most people quit. Not because the work is too hard, but because the silence gets too loud. See, pressure feels different when you're alone, when there's no one cheering, no one checking in, no one validating your effort. It's just you and the voice in your head asking, is this even worth it? And let me be honest with you. if you need constant encouragement, you're not ready for uncommon success. Because uncommon success is built in isolation. It's built in mornings where you question yourself, nights where progress feels invisible, days where discipline feels heavier than motivation ever did. But this is where strength is forged. Pressure doesn't destroy strong people. Pressure reveals them. It reveals who's serious and who's just excited. Because excitement fades, hype dies, motivation disappears. But discipline stays. Only if you trained it. Let me talk about sacrifice. Everybody wants success, but nobody wants to pay for it. They want the lifestyle without the lonely nights. They want the respect without the repetition. They want the reward without the routine. But success is not free. It demands time. It demands energy. It demands saying no to things that feel good now for something that matters later. And sacrifice hurts. Let's not pretend it doesn't. It hurts when you can't explain why you're missing out. It hurts when people call you distant. It hurts when relationships change because your standards changed. But here's the truth. You didn't become distant. You became disciplined. And discipline creates distance between you and distractions, between you and average, between you and the version of you that made excuses. Isolation isn't punishment. Isolation is training. It teaches you how to operate without applause. It teaches you how to move without permission. It teaches you how to keep going when nobody's watching. And if you can win there, you can win anywhere. See, most people can perform when eyes are on them. Very few can perform when it's just them and the work. That's why silent grinders are dangerous, because they don't need momentum from outside. They generate it internally. They don't wait for the perfect mood. They don't wait for confidence. They show up tired. They show up uncertain. They show up anyway. And showing up anyway is the difference. Let me say something real. This part of the journey will make you question your identity. You'll wonder if you're doing too much, if you're missing out on life, if this grind even makes sense. That's normal. Growth always feels confusing before it feels clear, but don't confuse discomfort with misalignment. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. Sometimes the hardest season is the most correct one because it's shaping you for pressure you haven't met yet. You're being trained for rooms you haven't entered, for responsibilities you haven't earned, for success that would crush the old version of you. So this silence, it's not empty. It's full of preparation. Every lonely morning is adding layers. Every disciplined decision is sharpening focus. Every sacrifice is buying future freedom. And one day, not today, not tomorrow, one day, people will ask, how did you do it? And you won't know how to explain it in one sentence. Because it wasn't one moment. It was years of invisible effort. Years of pressure without praise. Years of work done in silence. And that's why, when success finally shows up, it shocks them. Because they weren't there when you're being built. Listen to me closely. This is the stage where things stop feeling dramatic and start feeling normal. And that's dangerous because most people confuse normal with nothing is happening. But something is happening. You're changing quietly, gradually, irreversibly. See, consistency doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you fireworks. It doesn't give you applause. Consistency gives you identity. At first, you were forcing yourself to work. Forcing yourself to wake up early. Forcing yourself to stay disciplined. Now it feels strange not to. That's when you know the shift has started. Because you're not chasing motivation anymore. You're operating from habit. And habits don't negotiate. They don't ask how you feel. They don't care about excuses. They just run. This is where most people get it wrong. They think success comes from one big decision. One big moment. One big breakthrough. No. Success comes from small decisions done daily, until they change who you are. You didn't wake up one day disciplined. You became disciplined through repetition, through boredom, through days that looked identical. And that repetition is building something deeper than results. It's building standards. You no longer ask, do I feel like doing this? You ask, is this who I am? And when your actions match your identity, consistency becomes automatic. That's mastery. Mastery is boring to watch, but terrifying to compete against. Because mastery doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It doesn't overreact. It just shows up and performs over and over. Let me tell you something important. At this stage, people around you will start feeling uncomfortable. Not because you said anything, not because you showed off, but because your consistency is exposing their inconsistency. Your discipline is highlighting their excuses. Your growth is making their comfort look dangerous. And when people feel exposed, they react. Some will joke. Some will doubt. Some will distance themselves. That's not hatred. That's insecurity responding to discipline. And you must not let that pull you back. Because here's the truth. You're no longer trying to fit in. You're building something rare. And rare always looks strange to people living average lives. At this stage, you'll notice something else changing too. Your tolerance. You no longer tolerate wasted time. You no longer tolerate weak conversations. You no longer tolerate environments that drain you. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're focused. Focus requires sacrifice, and sacrifice requires saying no. A lot. This is where mastery sharpens. You start protecting your energy, your mornings, your routines, because you understand now. Discipline is fragile. One careless habit can undo months of progress. So you guard it. Not loudly, not arrogantly, quietly. You stop explaining yourself. You stop proving yourself. You let your routines speak. And slowly, very slowly, your results begin to compound. Not explode. Compound. You're stronger than before. Sharper than before. More controlled than before. And the scary part? You don't even realize how far you've come. Because growth feels normal when you live inside it. That's why one day, someone will look at you and say, "You've changed." And they'll mean it as a question. But it's not a question. It's a statement. You have changed. Not overnight. Not suddenly. But permanently. You're no longer driven by emotion. You're driven by standards. You don't need external pressure. You apply it yourself. You don't need deadline. This is what happens when discipline outlasts motivation. This is what happens when silence becomes routine. This is what happens when hard work stops being something you do and starts being who you are. And here's the most important part. At this stage, you don't chase success anymore. Success is chasing the person you become because you built the habits. You built the mindset. You built the resilience. You are now dangerous, not because you're loud, but because you're consistent. And consistency is undefeated. Listen to me. This is not the part where you celebrate early. This is not the part where you get emotional. This is the part where you stand still and let the results speak. Because after all those quiet mornings, after all those lonely nights, after all those sacrifices nobody noticed, something changes. Not around you, within you. You don't feel the need to explain yourself anymore. You don't feel the urge to announce anything. You don't feel pressure to prove you belong. You already know, and that knowing is louder than any applause. See, real success doesn't scream. It walks in calmly and shifts the room. People feel it before you say a word. They notice your posture, your patience, your confidence. Not loud confidence, grounded confidence. The kind that comes from repetition, from discipline, from surviving pressure without breaking. And this is where it happens. This is where people who doubted you start watching closely. Not because you changed, but because you stayed consistent. They didn't see the work. They didn't hear the struggle. They only see the outcome. And it shocks them because they thought you were quiet, because you were unsure. They thought you were silent because you were weak. They didn't know you were building something they wouldn't be able to ignore. And now they can't. But listen to me carefully. Do not let success make you loud. Loud people chase attention. Quiet winners command respect. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need to explain your journey. Your life explains it for you. The discipline, the consistency, the standards, they show up in how you move, how you speak, how you decide. Success didn't make you better than anyone. It made you responsible. Responsible to protect what you built. Responsible to stay disciplined. Responsible to never go back. Because here's the truth nobody talks about. Success tests you more than struggle ever did. Struggle forces discipline. Success tempts comfort. And comfort is sneaky. It whispers, "You've done enough." It invites old habits back. It encourages shortcuts. It asks you to relax standards. And this is where legacies die, not in failure, but in comfort. So you must remember who you were when nobody believed. You must remember those silent mornings, those tired nights, those sacrifices, not with bitterness, with gratitude, because that version of you built this version, and you don't disrespect that effort. By getting lazy now, you've crossed a line. There is no going back to inconsistency, no going back to excuses, no going back to average, not because you're afraid, but because you've tasted what discipline creates, and you'll never unsee it. People will ask you for advice now. They'll ask you for shortcuts. They'll ask you how long it took. They won't like the answer, because the answer isn't exciting. It wasn't luck. It wasn't talent. It wasn't motivation. It was work, quiet work, daily work, unseen work. And that answer makes people uncomfortable because it reminds them that success was never hidden. It was always available, just unpopular. So don't explain further. Don't overshare. Don't flex. Let them study your consistency instead of your words. Because now, you don't chase opportunities. Opportunities find you because of who you became when nobody was watching. And that's the final lesson. Work in silence is not about secrecy. It's about focus. It's about protecting your energy, your habits, your growth. And when the time is right, when the work is undeniable, you don't announce success. You arrive, calm, prepared, unshakable. And the same people who didn't believe will look at you and think, where did this come from? They'll never know because they weren't there in the silence. But you were. And that's why they're shocked. And you're just getting started.